Hello and good morning to the second IIMS webinar, Marine Surveying Fest. My name is Zarir Irani. I'm your global president and I welcome all of you to this day-long conference. I look forward to opening this day's proceedings with my presentation, which is on differentiating objectivity and subjectivity in the content of a survey report. I must highlight that the purpose of this presentation, or the beneficiaries of this presentation, would be those surveyors who write reports for insurance companies, either casualty or cargo claims, and these reports sometimes are read by lawyers, by those who dispute claims, or for that matter, pre-purchase reports. So objectivity is key to a report, and we'll discuss today a little bit about what that means, what that objectivity means. In my personal view, it is a crucial matter because we have had surveyors who sometimes in the process of writing the report get a bit engrossed in the content and end up writing subjective comments in their reports. And I must mention that it is sometimes what makes or breaks a good report, and we'll see it. We see some examples and see how some of the reports, even those which are written by experienced professionals, are compromised with comments which are subjective, in my view. So, moving on with the first slide, and the picture depicts exactly what the objective evidence is about, and subjective. The blue section with somebody commenting on terrible pain on the back, one with and without dagger on the back, is with and without proof, because pain is a very, very relative and a subjective matter. And if you see evidence of that pain with a knife at the back, it means that if you would be an objective comment if you see evidence of that pain. But if it's not, then you always have this doubt whether or not it is subjective. To briefly discuss the contents of the paper today, I would say I would have to discuss about some examples. We'll talk about a grounding incident. We'll talk about a collision, and in my opinion, what the client would expect out of you when he is nominating an independent surveyor to comment on the facts, collect facts, and present it to him. As a result, you take a call whether to go ahead or not. Okay, moving on. Now, a subjective writing of a sort, an example would be something that you would have written in your essays, your personal essays. It would be autographs, biographies, editorial sections of newspapers where journalists express their opinions. This would be where you would find the most examples of subjective writing. It's your view. An essay is your imagination. You're given a topic, you're narrating it. So that's where you would most likely find subjective writing, which is good there, and it should belong there. There's no room for it in a survey report, in my understanding. We'll talk about it a little later when there is a technical opinion sought by a client from y'all, from us surveyors. But in my view, it's got to be factual as far as it is, and that is the meaning of having a subjective content in your report. So let's start with the meanings of the word subjective. It's information subjective information is anything that is based on personal opinion, judgments, feelings, or points of view. However, objective evidence information is factual and is based on observations and measurements. So if you see a damage and you're measuring the damage, you're commenting on the extent of that damage. We will talk about it. So a measurement of your damaged hull or a breach, when we take measurements and have VDR support on what may have caused it, it would be objective evidence, and if mentioned in a proper way, we would get comfortable with writing that in our report, saying that it is objective. Those who are reading it would know that there's evidence backing what you have written down. We'll talk about it. It's going to come later in the presentation, and we will take it forward. Now, moving on a little bit on the first case of what we have seen in one of the reports. It's a case that is now it's already had its results, and something that happened off Jebel Ali, its collision, and we'll talk about some aspects of this report and see how objective or subjective the report was. I have put the link there where you can read the whole report and make an assessment yourself, but that's what happened to the vessel which was involved in the collision. As you can see the picture, it had its bow smashed up. And let's talk about the report itself and a few wordings out of the report, where in the report, and the report can be found on the website mentioned. Number one, a buoy, figure 3, where on passage to Jumeirah, east of Jebel Ali, the VTS asked tug skipper, "Can you see the big tanker waiting?" The tug skipper advised the VTS to instruct him to cross 1 nautical mile stern of the tanker. When you quote and unquote, there is a clear evidence that this information or these sentences were spoken, and there is video evidence of that. Then the next comment said, Alexandra One's master heard part of this radio exchange and assumed that Jebel Ali port was talking to Ever Smart. The master assessed that in order to pass the stern of his vessel, Ever Smart would alter course to port on clearing the channel. Now, how does the investigator know that the master assumed this, even if it wasn't a statement given by the master? That's, in my view, subjective. That's a subjective comment. Having the master's assumption mentioned in your report would be a bit of a question mark, in my view. Everything else, the following comment says that at 23:31, as Ever Smart was approaching number 3 buoy, the pilot and master discussed pilot is parking, etc., etc. At so-and-so Alexandra, telegraph was set at stop, etc., etc. Now, let's talk about the tabular format of reporting, where we have quote-unquote timings on one column and VTS recordings of exactly what the master said in the narrative. So at 23:41, 48 seconds later, Ever Smart, this is Jebel Ali port. This was as it was said on the VTS. It was narrated, it's put down. Now, we can say that all this, Table 6 clearly says VHF radio exchange between Jebel Ali port, Ever Smart, the pilot, and Alexandra 1. Okay? Now, this is clear objective evidence. Objective evidence in the sense where it says exactly verbatim how it happened. When somebody is reading this and it's backed with a video recording, there is clear evidence that this is objective evidence in a casualty investigation. Moving on, let's talk about the next comment, which while reading the report came to my view. There's a little radar screenshot there of Ever Smart Sport radar display of 23:42, 7 seconds later. And the comment goes, I'll read it out. During these VHF transmissions, Alexandra 1's main engine telegraph was set to full astern. The tanker's deck lights and external accommodation lights were also switched on. At 23:42, 12 seconds, let me insist on that, Ever Smart's master ordered, "Okay, hard to starboard." He exclaimed, "What's that?" 3 seconds later, the report reads, 3 seconds later, at 23:42, 19 seconds. The earlier timing was 12 seconds. This is 19 seconds. Ever Smart and Alexandra 1 collided bow to bow. The vessels were 4 cables from number 1 buoy. Now, if you calculate the 2 timings mentioned in this sentence, or the 2 consecutive sentences, 23:42, 12 seconds, at 23:42, 19 seconds, there is a 7 seconds differentiator, but the report reads 3 seconds. Now, this is not justified, it's not objective. It can be considered as an error, but my view, it is a subjective comment that the report mentions 3 seconds later. There is no evidence in writing or in any aspect that is presented here that it was 3 seconds, and in fact it was 7 seconds. Now, like I said, there's a thin line between it being subjective and it being a genuine error in writing the report, but there is something that we can talk about till cows come home. Moving on, we're talking about another section of this same report. The link is there again for you to review the whole report. But if you look at the comments about the master, Ever Smart's master was 57 years of age and was a Taiwanese national. He held a Chinese STCW2 certificate of competency with a UK certificate of equivalency. Master had employed he was 3.5 years as master, 4.5 months on board, it says. The master was well rested and did not drink alcohol. He had never previously visited Jebel Ali. Now, all the comments which I read earlier, except for the master was well rested. Well rested is subjective. He may have had nothing to do for this hours to that hours, and if that is presented, it would have meant a bit more objectively speaking, than the writer mentioning well rested. Well rested is questionable. Now, here's an example. If I had to write the same comment objectively, I would have said the master went to his cabin and did not interact with anyone from this time until this time. Upon interrogation, the master said he was in bed and asleep from this time to this time, as per the statement given by the master. He was not seen on the bridge. It was verified by the third mate, and he wasn't in any interaction with any of the officers, engineers, and was truly in his cabin. That would have meant that he was resting, or he was well rested. We could have said that, as per the master's comment, he said he had a shut eye from this hours to this hours, and which would then imply that he was well rested, rather than comment on well rested. However, moving on. A number of discrete items will build together to support an opinion which becomes evidence and fact. This is part of the surveyor's primary role. If you put facts together and present it in the report, it would automatically imply on a story. I just mentioned about the resting hours. Now, surveyor's findings in a report have clearly got to be only factual. Now, with that said, we'll talk about a small grounding incident, and a lot of times one has to mention damages of what they see, and a small example. The bottom 20 meters by 12 meters of the hull double bottom internals on the port side were noted buckled. During the survey of this buckled area, the hull break was noted, the hull breach was noted to be so much by so much and so much by so much between frame number so and so. Along with that, a small measure tape indicating what you have at random. You can't put all the pictures of all the measurements and everything, but just an example of a tape put across a certain breach would probably go a long way in clearly, objectively indicating that that was in effect the extent of damage. Evidence is key. Putting it out there, you may think that each and every piece of measurement is required. It's not. Just a random sample. You would have pictures and file photos with you in case it's litigated and this question could be presented. But generally, an indication like that would suffice. My next comment would be on the statements pointing towards a particular conclusion based on objective evidence. A lot of times, surveyors are very keen and are asked out of turn to give an indication on what they think may have happened. A small example I'd give: whilst aground, soundings around the ship's port side showed there to be evidence of clear water on the port side, and the ship's log showed previous grounding on the port side several months before. Therefore, it is unlikely that the damage occurred as a result of this grounding. Now, this is a concluding statement by the surveyor, but he has justified that there was a sounding taken, and he has clearly mentioned that there was a ship's log verified, and there was previous grounding several months before noted. Now, Of course, this is just a caption of it, but there would be a lot of supplementary and associated documentary evidence that would be attached with the report to substantiate it. But here's a conclusion, an example of how the surveyors arrived to a conclusion based on objective evidence. Mind you, we are all humans, and giving an opinion comes naturally to us, and there is no reason why a surveyor may not give a client his opinion. It's technical opinion. There is also a legal opinion on a certain matter, but it is very important to understand what your opinion is for and what it means. It's only a technical opinion. It's only a surveyor's point of view. Now, while a client is expressly asked for this opinion, in my personal view, it is very important to be very, very cautious of providing this opinion when asked. The key is that an opinion has to be based on facts, only on the available facts, so a surveyor can fall back on what factual data he's basing his viewpoints and opinions on. Provided opinion may be different when more facts are disclosed or made available. Now, I could pick up something and say that I see an IMS logo there. However, what I see right now is all that I see on this President's pendant. But a day later, if somebody turns it around and shows me the other side, I might have another opinion of there being a second side to it, and there being more evidence available, and as a result my comment would change or be added to my earlier opinion that the other side has this, that. But when you're shown this side, you very well factually know the other side exists. You have not seen it, you've not been shown, you've not been given access to stuff that you come on board to see. It's very important to make a clear comment in your reports that there might be more information out there which may be available later, and as a result you reserve the right to add on and have a different view on your earlier comment. So that's important to mention. Moving on, well, when you are instructed for a certain job, for a survey, the first indication you get is how bad is it. You try to assess it. When you go on board, the first survey, first walkabout you do is to understand the gravity of it. And most often than not, you would get a view of it, that it is going to be probably litigated. Examples, if there is a collision with two vessels being underway, it would clearly mean that it's going to be litigated. If there is severe damage, a few plates buckled and holes in the hull, and both the vessels were afloat, you know that's going to be disputed. May not go all the way, but at least be argued between the hull, the P&I, etc. Be very particular, in my view, to limit the reports to what you see objectively, and to start telling yourself, I'm collecting evidence only, forming an opinion is later on. But if one feels that the information is of value but is outside the scope of the work that you're doing, let's say there is a casualty investigation, injury, death on board, and you're going for P&I, but there is more to it than that. There is something else. You have to seek client's advice. A verbal or a confidential note is very important, and information should not become public knowledge. So you got to preserve that information. what can be done is, if you have something that you think is contentious, can be directed to the legal advisors instead of writing to your club or a client. So if you know that there is a legal advisor or lawyers are appointed, you could address the report or these kind of extra information on to the lawyers. You can send your electronic reports addressed to them and not to the club. So that's a way to put down some extra information, or you think what may be in contention, maybe contentious information. Now, let's talk about another vessel. Let's talk about another case of deaths, missing people, and cargo tanks exploding. Let me assure you that even if in today's day, if there is a big explosion on a tank at a busy anchorage like probably Fujairah in UAE, chances are that it's been recorded. It's already, on social media, etc., etc. Now, it's already the objective evidence probably is already there. Now, it's very important to see what's there before you comment or before you give out new information. That might not be a close-up, that might not be a clear indication, but when we are writing today's era of electronic reporting, it's very important to keep a holistic view of what we are doing, because objective evidence and factual information of the event when it happened may be out there. It may have been there before you've been appointed, but you can take that into consideration and use that in the report, or at least refer it in your report, saying that it is what it is, because that information is probably in public domain. Shouldn't be, but some misdemeanors put it out. Most likely, I mean, with everybody being eager to report what incidents happen around the world first, and there are enough websites to talk about marine casualties these days, it is very important that the surveyor himself is aware of this. Let's move on to a very important terminology which is called conjecture. Now this is a very seldom used word. Now, conjecture is a conclusion or portion based on incomplete information for which no proof has been found. For example, we talked about the earlier comment by one of the reporters where they said that the master assumed. Now, whether the master assumed or didn't assume that information, that VHF communication was for him or for the tug, how would you know? How would the surveyor know the master assumed unless he was there to see? Master may have said it in his comment, etc., but that should have been clearly indicated. Conjecture is not the role of an independent surveyor. What you don't see, you don't report, but you leave it open to say that there might be more information out there. Surely not when attending a claim, an investigation, investigative assignment on behalf of either parties. A better way of putting down a conclusion or a conjecture is a cause consideration. You have a technical opinion, a technical view on the cause consideration based on the facts you collected, so you can put it out there for the reader of your report to consider this as one of the causes. It may not be the proximate cause, but when you put it down as a cause consideration, they know that there may be other considerations, there may be more causes, and it's just one of the views that one of the surveyors out of the joint survey may be making. Let's talk about some examples of subjectivity in conjectures, in conclusions of report. Master, crew were extremely tired. Well, comments such as that clearly means that it's a conjecture. Master was incompetent. Well, who are you to judge competency as a surveyor? So never ever use those. I would not use that in my report. Vessel was or is or will be unseaworthy. Let's say you go for a lashing check, etc., and some lashings are loose and the master decides to sail. You check the lashings and probably comment saying that, oh look, there's unlashed heavy cargo on deck, and that makes the vessel unseaworthy inside the hold. That makes the vessel unseaworthy. Well, it's not. You're not there to judge whether the vessel was seaworthy just because there was some holes on deck or some cargo which was heavy and unlashed on deck. So unseaworthy comments or will be unseaworthy, is unseaworthy, it's got no room in your report. It's a very, very dangerous word, this unseaworthy. They did everything to avoid collision. Did they? I don't think there's I have yet to see a collision. Let's see, that either parties did everything to avoid it. There's always something more you can do. So again, another conjecture. As she was a stationary vessel, the onus of action was only on the other giver vessel. I mean, how many times have we asked to go out at Jebel Ali port and been asked to give a view on what may have happened or things. Now, one or the other vessel may be an anchor, but really, what the onus of the vessel is a question. I wouldn't want to put any of that in my presentation or in my report. Let's talk about one last aspect. There's one most important concluding slide which I want to talk about before I end this presentation, and this is the takeaway points from my paper. What you have been listening. What would you remember out of what I just blabbered away? Don't take up a matter litigious enough if you are not having reasonable experience for such a job, because that would lead inevitably you to be questioned about subjectivity. There may be, innocently speaking, you may have written something subjectively, but if you're not absolutely confident on having reasonable experience, again, reasonable experience is questionable, but you must make sure that if it is a litigious matter, you're the right man for the right job. Because if you're not, and if they get, whoever's reading the report has a slightest idea that you may not have adequate experience for doing that job, they look for those subjective comments, and then they will base and link that to your experience, and that might leave you with your pants down to your knees. Do not give out opinions easily, nor without being asked for. I was told when I was getting trained as a surveyor, there are two types of reports. One is a survey report, which is factual, and the other is a consultancy assignment. And the consultancy assignment is much more valuable, and that has some opinions. As a consultant, with the experience, you have to opine on a certain matter, and that is only upon asking. Your technical opinion is asked for, and that's much more valuable than a fact-finding mission as a survey report. So most assignments stick to facts. If you're not got clear indications, instructions of giving your opinion about concluding statements, do not give it. Stay away from it. Leave the conclusion bit for the lawyers to draft, because there's always a legal side to your technical opinion. And the legal opinion may differ to who probably was at fault. We just talked about one vessel, maybe at anchor, and she did everything to avoid collision, right? as per law, did she? And the lawyer might come around and say, she didn't. Beware of words which you get in your instruction. Even today, I've been endlessly talking about it, but sometimes club, sometimes correspondence, sometimes just the instructing party, the claims handlers, they put down protect members' interest. Well, protect members' interest, really, we're not there to protect anybody's interest, but you get instructions even today to say that you nominated as owner's surveyor, and you got to do what you do to protect the members' interest. As an independent surveyor, protecting interest, I don't know. So beware of these kind of words in yours. You can go back and verify with the client what they mean exactly by protecting an interest or two. So with that comment, with those comments on objectivity and subjectivity, gentlemen, I would like to say thank you. I've got my last slide, and most of these examples which I have drawn out are from the 3 publications I've referred to. These come from the Institute's diploma, and you can see the dates, they're really old. 2009-10 editions of the Marine Surveying Diploma books that I have on record with me. And some of this information is drawn from there. But to end this, I would say, please be explicit and be as objective in your survey reports as you can. It'll hold you up in good stead. There's nothing wrong in a client asking you again, please give us your technical opinion, give it up. Be very, very cautious of what you are sending, even as your prelim report or as your follow-up reports, because once a report is dispatched, it's admissible evidence, it can be pulled out. All communications to the club, to the client are all admissible. So please be very factual in your narrative. With that, I wish you all the best for the rest of the day's webinar. Marine Surveying Fest, I must say. It's meant for the members and non-members, whoever are signing up for this, who are far away, who cannot come for conferences that IIMS holds. I think it's a great initiative. Continue to listen to the presentations that interest you. They'll probably be sent back to you. They're all available online. There's a lot of information. I think IIMS headquarters, led by Mike Swartz, are doing a fantastic job of it. All the best. Good luck. And any questions, I'm happy to take on email, or I'll be online shortly, live. You can ask me those questions and we can discuss at length. But thank you very much for a patient listen, and have a great day. This is Zarir Irani, your IIMS president for 2018-2020. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.